Okay, Veera, Divya, Shandeep. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're able to.
Great. Divya, Shandeep. Okay. Just give me a second. Sorry, sir, I can't start a mic. Okay, fine. That's okay, Divya. At least you can hear me, right? Okay. So, how many of you are done with this problems like uh, what we have discussed about this few of the uh, things like crypto process, buffer, file system? How many of you are all clear with this stuff? If you guys have any questions, please go ahead and then we will start with our current session. You know how to generate a public key and private key and all, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So guys, please go ahead with the practice with these things, because if you are not practicing right there, then you really didn't understood like what is happening over there. Definitely you need to practice a lot. So these are very simple programs. At least give a try for copy paste the things and just try to execute at least the minimum basic things and all. Okay. Okay. We will go something with okay. So when you go for doctorate, okay, people may have some questions like how we will proceed with what it is called like uh, what are the other things what we can learn apart of these file systems and all, right? So there are lot of things are there. And first of all, I do have some other stuff to discuss for today. Okay, not with the modules and all. I can go with one of the module called a voice module, or still we will discuss more about a console. Okay, remember the things we will discuss something about a console. There are some examples in my hand for a console, and as well as a OS, and then a path. Okay, three. What else we have? Three. Okay, out of three, string decoder is there, but just a minute. Let me see what are the string decoders are there. Uh, there are only simple examples like buffer from and all. That's fine. New string decoder dot end. Okay, right. Okay, this thing we can cover because this is a small module, string decoder. Total four more modules I will cover. Four plus currently we have already four. Total eight modules we are done. I mean we will have that. And zlib is one of the best direct. Actually, this module you need to. You guys can see my screen, I hope. So there are few. There is a library. There is a Z library is one of the better library what we are using in Node.js. Basically, this is most of the frequently people are used in the real times, like just a minute. Okay, so there are a lot of people which are used zlib library. I mean, if you are using some socket programming or something, then people will definitely use this zlib library. Okay, so along with that, libuv is one of the third-party library that you guys needs to read about this one. But still, I will try to cover with a more libuv directory. Okay, see, just go with the libuv. I think I already mentioned about this one. So libuv in Node.js, just read about this one because this libuv is internally we are using a lot. I will go with about this one as well. Okay, just it may have a 2 to 3 functions. Along with that, we have something called a socket.io as well. Somewhere did we mention like socket.io here? No, right? Okay, there is a socket.io library is there. Okay. Okay, the socket.io which we will use like for implementing this chat application and well, definitely this one you have to read a little bit. Okay, I will go through this one by one. Okay, as you know, as you know, there are few things. Okay, first of all, let me go here and what is this? This is a key stage generation. Okay, fine. Okay, leave this one. So first of all, I will create one file here. Let's say that is a let's consider it is a file 4.js. Okay, okay. So we will discuss something about a little bit called objects. Okay. So how many of you are aware of objects? Did I ever discuss about these objects? Like what kind of how you can create objects in a JavaScript? And obviously you know how to create an JavaScript, but yeah, I just want to know. I don't know. Okay. Okay. So basically what you need to do, for example, you are going here. I mean, I will take a new what it is called new browser, I mean new tab here. Okay, go ahead and here you can see the console here, right? So okay, I will go with a few of the things here, but today I just want you to make you understand like how these things will work. Okay, but anyways, we have a lot of things, but for now I will try to cover. Okay. Do you know how to create an object in the JavaScript? You guys can just chat at least if you are there, just you can. So let's say there is an object here. Okay, inside the object, I have created something called a name, and name is something like a value, and something like height. Let's say and something like this. Okay, let's say I have something object like this. Now, if you put a console.log of object, okay, so what you are seeing here, basically you can see something like there is an object which is displaying. You need to mute. Okay, and so these are the values which we are displaying here. But I suggest you guys go with the descriptors, I mean property descriptors. Okay. Before going to property descriptors, what I need to you to do is I just create, I mean, I will go with the developers Mozilla MBA. And here we have something called object functions. Okay. Here there is something called some methods called get on descriptors, get on property names, get on property descriptors. Okay. So define properties and define property. These methods are there. Did we discuss about this one? Did we mention anywhere about the notes about these things? No, right? Buffer, and this one is a file system. Okay, no, we didn't discuss much about this. Descriptors. Okay, first of all, you need to understand these descriptors because we are going to play with the object in very soon. So that is the reason I request you to go through this concept one more time. Okay, so this is how you will create an object. Okay, so a part of that, how you can create another object. For example, I have something called object one here. Okay, so I'm just displaying this object one here. Okay, fine. Now let's say I have something called object two. You want to create an object two here. So what are the other way to create this one? There is something called did you ever seen this kind of notation, new object of something like a obj2 dot name equals to something like a test. Okay, so obj2 dot age equals to something like a 34, something like this. Now if you put a console dot log of obj2, then what we are displaying here, we can just generate, I mean we can just display that particular object, whatever it is, that object will be prepared. Okay, these are the better two ways, I mean to say one of the ways to create a object in your what it is called in your mm, JavaScript. Okay, so what are the other ways you are aware of? Can you guys just tell me or give me some useful ways to create like objects on so object of okay, I'm not talking about accessing that one variables, but I'm just trying to, yeah, this is also I agree Sandeep, like you have something called let object equals to 3, object 3 equals to something like an empty object. Okay, so now you can mention something like a object 3 of, okay, instead of a dot notation you can use square bracket notation of something like a name, something like I can put as a Sandeep, let's say, and let's say object 3 of something like gender, it is something like a male, you can put it something like this. Okay, this is also one of the way, a console.log of object 3. Okay, save, and if I try to run this one, so you can see that object creates and they become a gender. Okay, this is one way. Okay, so what else you can have, I mean what are the other ways you can do this, or you can create an object? Anyway, just go ahead with your thoughts. Okay. Yes, don't we have any other ways to create an object in the JavaScript? Okay, create method, yes, object dot create method is there. Yes, that is what I'm expecting. Let's say, for example, say if I go here, right, if you do something in a JavaScript, something is a different than compare with the other programming languages. What is that? Let's say I have created some object, something like, let's say object equals to whatever you have just now, Sandeep, right? You have talked something like let object, okay. Now, if I put something like an object here, what will happen? See, if you see this one, right, there is an empty object. Okay. Along with that empty object, you have something called a prototype of object. Did you ever guys heard about this prototype? Or else, let's say, let obj equals to something like this. If I'm trying to do something like this, something like a name, something like a value, and if I put something like object here, and see, if you go with the name and all along, see this name anyways I have mentioned here inside the object, then what is this prototype here is? Did you guys ever heard about this prototype? No. Okay, you need to learn about this prototype also. Okay, I'm just giving a glimpse about this one. Okay, before that, first of all, I will go with these things. I mean to say, like, I will go with the object here. Okay, there is a method called create method. Okay, basically what object or create method will do, it will create a new object. Okay, that is one of the easiest way to understand like how the object will be. Okay, and remember one thing, when you are using a create method, it will create the same kind of prototype. I mean to say, like, it will not create all the values, key pair values. The object.create static method creates a new object using an existing object as the prototype of a newly created object. I mean to select, it won't create a duplicate object. Instead of that, it will create a prototype. Okay. So first of all, first try to understand how the object.create will work. For example, let's say I have something like a base object. Let's say, okay, inside the base object, I have something called a ooh, inside the base object, I have something called a name. Okay, inside the name, it's let's say test name is my name. Okay, that's it. And something like a age, and age equals to something like a 56. Let's say whatever. Now I'm creating a letter, something like a child object. Okay, I'm just creating a or copy object. Okay, so what is this copy object? This copy object is nothing but I want to create a same kind of object, but it is really not a same data with the same data and all. Okay, so what you can do, you can use something like object dot create method. Inside the object dot create method, if you put a something like a base object. Okay, now what I will do, console dot log, I'm just mentioning something like a base object is equals to, okay, or a base object. Okay, what is the base object is? That's nothing but a base object. And similarly, console dot log out something like a child object. Okay, child object is equals to, okay, what is the child object is something like a child object. Oh, sorry, copy object. Okay, copy object. Okay, this is the one. Let's see what is the output here. Basically, what I am expecting from the base object is that is a name equals to test name and age equals to 56. But in the child object or copy object, what if we want is we want the same kind of structure, but we cannot have the data and all. Okay. Oops. Okay, if you observe this one, right, base object contains some values, but child object is not having some values. Seriously, the create in the sense the name itself indicates that it is a creation. Okay, but why it is not creating? It will create only the prototype. That means whatever the base object is contains, that prototype is having inside the copy object, but it will never have that values under. Okay, for example, I'm just putting something like a console.log, something like a base object is my object, and we are checking with exactly equals to the copy object. Okay, now every time whenever you are using a triple equals to operator, right, definitely what it will do, it will check the prototype. Okay, so simply it will check the prototype. Inside the prototype, we don't have a value of whatever we have inside the base value, the same values which are not having inside the copy value. Okay, so now you can assign some values. For example, what I will do, I will just mention here. Okay, I will do the same thing. Whatever the name is having the name and age equals to something, right? So what I will do is inside the copy object dot name equals to some address is different. Exactly, the reference is completely a different. Okay, copy object dot age. Okay, yes, it's correct. The reference is always a different. Okay, the 56, it's a 56. Okay, now let's see what will happen here. Okay, still I'm not, oh, I'm sorry, I need to cut down here and I need to put it here. Okay, so now let's check that one. Okay, if you check this one, still it is a false value. Why? Because the address of the base object is different and the address of the copy object is different. So always remember that create object dot create will create a same kind of prototype, but not exactly with the values and you don't need to give same value here. Something like a test new name. Okay, you can give us a just new name here. Okay, so you can change the values and all, but still you can I'm just taking something. Okay, so you can just change the values and okay. This is what the reference. Basically, if you go for a reference of the object, this is what happens inside here. Okay, now let's say uh, what it is called. Like let's say people somebody may ask you like write your own custom logic for some of the different methods. Okay, first of all, whatever we have discussed is only for something called a create method. Okay, similarly, if you want to use a assign method, I mean to say like there is some method called assign method. Okay, what is this assign method window? This assign method static method copies all enumerable one properties from one or more sources objects to the target object. It returns the modified target object. Basically, what will happen here? Okay, so for the assign object, you need to mention one target, and it can be any number of sources. Okay, I will show you some simple examples here. Okay, just a minute, guys. Okay, this is simple object creation. Next one, this is something like object creation using object class. Similarly, you have something called this one is done using square brackets notation. You are trying to create an object using create method. You are trying to create an object by using send method. Okay, so what you will do by using SN method? Okay, basically what you can do is, so by using SN method, you can create any number. I mean, you can create a target object by using one or source methods. Okay, first of all, I will go with a simple example. Let's say I have something like a var. My something is a target object. This is my target object. Okay, so initially the target object is nothing but okay. First, go with a traditional method. Let's say mine is a object. Okay, test object one. Okay, this is my object. Okay, similarly I have another object function called a test object two. Okay, so what you will do inside my test object one, I have something called a name. Okay, something like a abc, something like a age equals to 15, something like that. Similarly in my test object, I have something called a name xyz, and something like a age, something like a 45. Similarly something like a okay, true. Let's see. There are three parameter, I mean three uh, properties here. There are only two properties here. So how we can use a assign method here? Okay, the basically what you can do, something like a console.log of, there is something like a object dot assign method is there. Okay, if I use a assign method, okay, inside the assign method you can pass two values. One is a test object one, comma test object two. Okay, basically in this case what will happen here? So whenever you are trying to do here, right, this is considered as a source and this is considered as a target. Always remember that thing. The first one is a target and this is a source. So all these values copy into this one. Okay, in that case, whatever the name abc will be overwritten by xyz, and whatever the 15 will be overwritten by 45. Along with that, the new property is good equals to true will also come here. Okay, so the same thing I'm trying to do here. I mean, I'm just trying to explain here. See, the name xyz and age 45 is equals to true. Okay, so this one is coming. We are thinking like why it is a source object is printing, because it is overwriting it. Okay, now I'm just changing here in such a way, something like a object 2 comma test object 1. In that case is what will happen. My target is a test 2, my source is a test 1. So this abc will be overwrite here and this 15 will be overwrite here, and whatever the is good true will be parameter will be stay as it is. Okay, but this is not a good practice to change the existing objects. That is the reason what people will do whenever you are writing something like right assign method, right, always make sure the empty object as a target object. On the top of that, whatever you will mention, everything will come, but then in a similar fashion. Okay, forget about this target one, keep it as it is. First what it will come in this order. This is a target and it will copy to here and it will copy to here. The same way we will do here. See, ABC test one is a ABC, right? That will be overwritten to XYZ, and 15 is overwritten to 45, and then is good equals to parameter will also come here. So that is why we are getting something like a name is ABC, age is a 15, is good equals to true. So that means remember one thing: if you put only one object here, right? You can mention any number of objects. The first parameter is always a target object, and remaining all the parameters are nothing but a source objects. Okay, you can do something like this. If you mention any number of objects, like for example, now I will change a little bit. It is a name and the age is here, right? Here I'm not having these parameters. Instead of that, I'm just putting something like a height equals to something like a 5.2, and is good equals to true. These are the two parameters which I have. Now, what is I'm expecting? Test one and test two. These should be merged here and come back to the new target object here. So that is how we will receive. So my target object is having a four parameters like height, is good, name, and age. For these purposes, we are using a multiple sources here. Multiple sources in the sense, if you can have any number of objects here, and all those numbers, I mean, all those objects should pass into the single target object. Are we clear up to here? Okay, I think so. So there, this is one of the way to create objects. I mean, in a real time, what you will do, you will just put something like test object equals to, okay, and this is the one, it's a empty object, right? So now what you will do, you will pass this test object as a target object, and so both all the source objects will be passed here. Okay, I mean, so like I'm just giving in order just to make you understand. Object one, object two, so on, so on, so on. Okay, now you will receive a big object here. And remember one thing, objects can be nested. I mean, I hope you are also aware of how the objects are nested and how the things will work. Okay, so what objects can be nested in this sense? Let's say I have something called object here. Okay, that object is something called, let's consider it is a person object. Okay, inside the person object, what we have something called a name. Okay, something like like person is person, let's say person is a person, and something like age equals to 23, let's say. And I want to mention something like a address. Inside the address, what I will do, I will have another object. Inside the object, something like a street, and street equals to something like a KP, let's say. And something like a house number or pin code, let's say there is a pin code, and pin code is having a 1 2 3 4 5 6 something, these number of variables, right? So this is how the objects can be nested. Okay, of course, the same way we will use to what access the properties. If we want somebody ask to access the pin number from the person object, then what you will do, simply something like a person dot address dot pin. Simply you can do something in this way, or else you can use a bracket notation. The bracket notation lessons something like a person of something like, see, while you are using a bracket notation, definitely you need to mention the property name inside the single quotes or a double quotes. Okay? So that is the reason we are using something like this. It's a multi-dimensional array. You can use any number of properties like this. Okay, save. And let's say if you are having something like pin numbers, I mean, this is a way to use a bracket notation. Use bracket notation. Okay, and here if you are trying to access by using, oh, dot notation, sorry, use dot notation, and this one is a simply use a bracket notation. So there are multiple ways to do this one. Okay, so this is how we can create an object. Okay, so I mean, those are there, as I mentioned, like objects are nested objects are there. So you can use a nesting objects concept to what it is called. You can access all those objects, and inside the sub objects in the sense what are inside the objects, you can access all those here. Okay, now basically you are aware of. I mean, I am expecting that you are aware of how you can traverse the object. This can be may not be new to you, but definitely you need to know what are how we can do that and all. So that is the reason I'm just giving an example for this one. Okay, for example, I have something like this base object and all. Okay, if you go to base object, and let's say you have something like what it is called object, let's say 1 2 3 objects are there. Let's say I have given something like object 4. Okay, if you want to traverse the object, I mean to select traversing in the sense, if you can go with the one by one element inside the, or one by one key property value inside particular key value properties inside the object. Just a minute, yes, I'm sorry. Moving something. Okay, that's fine. Leave it. So you want to traverse each and every key value properties here. Okay, properties are really very important. Okay, it's a very very important concept. That's why I'm just repeating one more time. Okay, just go with these examples one more time. Okay, so just a minute. Okay, so how you can traverse through the objects? I mean, is what are the possible ways to traverse through the objects? Did you ever heard about traversing in the sense just displaying each and every key value pairs? How you can do that? Did you ever heard about something called furring? Okay, let's say there is something called a property. Let's say prop in the object, something like yes, obj4. So this is my why I'm giving capital letters. Very bad. Okay, object 4. So let's say I have given something like object 4 is my object and prop. Okay, so foreign, if you use the foreign, you can display something like a console.log and all the properties. Let's say if you want to display all the properties, you can do that by using this way. Okay, so this is just display all the properties. But if you want to display all the values itself, so what I will do, I will just put it in this way just to make you understand. Okay, this is a one property plus the property value and plus colon. Okay, I just want to display the column and plus the value, the key value pairs you need to display it. The key is displayed here, and if you want to display the value, then what you can do, like obj4 of in square bracket something like a property value. You can directly mention obj dot prop. Okay, this will work. Okay, so in that cases what will happen here? Okay, so I'm sorry, obj dot prop value you don't display. In this case definitely you need to your brackets. In the square brackets, you need to mention the prop, also obj dot of prop. So that means you can see that a test name and age equals 55. This is one of the way to access all the properties and all. Okay, you can have this. Just 1 second. I'm really sorry. This is somewhat important. Uh, Anis, Anis, actually, I was in bit call. Can I call you by 8 o'clock if it is okay for you? I'm extremely sorry. I'm middle in the call. Definitely. Okay. So definitely I will call you back by 8:05 or 8:10. I will call you back. Okay. Sure. Thank you, Anis. Sure. Thank you, Anis. Thank you. Okay, so this is how we can create all the properties and all, and you can access all the values, key values inside of the properties. Okay, this is one of the best way to do that. But somebody may ask you like, how you can like, do we need to use inside the for loop and to get all the property names? I mean, is it really to use that one? No, you can use something called get all the properties by using a keys method. There is something called a keys method. Okay, so if you go with this one, right, there is something called a where it is keys. So there is something called a keys method. When you are using a keys method, you can get all the properties which are declared inside the object. Okay, simply I'm trying to do the same thing. For example, this is my object. Okay, I will just put the object here. I just mentioned something like a file. Okay, now if you want to console.log of, then use the object internal method, something called a keys. Okay, when you are using a keys method, definitely it will display all the property names in the format of a array. Okay, always remember that in the format of array it will return. Okay, the keys method will take a object as a parameter, so I'm just giving object 5. I'm sorry, object 5 as a key parameter into the keys parameter. So now we got something like a name comma age, something like that. So this is the one way, what it is called, to get all the keys inside, or all the what it is called, all the property names into a one object. But there is another parameters are there. There is something called object dot values, which will return only the values of the particular keys. For example, if I say something like this, similarly I'm using get all the properties and values by using a keys and values method. There is something called a values method. So inside the values method, what we will do, we will just mention something like a values. Whatever the keys are there, right? The same values will comes to you. For example, my keys is the name and age, so that is the reason I'm getting an array name and age. Similarly, I have something called a values method. Inside the values method, I have something called a test name and the 56. That is what I'm expecting here. Okay. I didn't save this. I'm sorry. I didn't save this. Okay, you can see like a test name under 56. So most of the times the my mistake is either typo or not saving the. file. That is the reason it is not updating. I'm extremely sorry. So object.values is a which will return all the values inside the key object, whatever this will come. Okay. And now somebody may ask you a question something like this. Okay, convert your object into subarrays of arrays. Subarrays of arrays. That means what? That means you have something like this. Let's say you have an object something like this. Okay. So if you have an object like this, somebody is expecting an output something in this format. Let's say there is an object 6 is here, and now if you want to convert this one into this format, let's say name and value pairs, key and value name value pairs. For example, name. My name is something like a test name. Okay, test name. And for example, I have another key value property that is a age and something like a 56. Okay, something like this. I want to get an array, something like this. How you can convert your object into this kind of array? You don't need to write any custom logic and all. Instead of that, you have some what it is called, some predefined method is there. That method is something called entries. Okay, when you go for a method called entries, so the object.entry static method return an array of a given object's own enumerable string keyed property key pair values. Okay, so this is how we will resolve. For example, what I will do, the console.log of, instead of console.log of, then you can use object dot entries is my method. Insert the object dot entries of which one? The object 6. So if you go for object is entries, then it will return some array. See, if you see, observe this one, right? Name is a test name, age is a 56, so something like this. It is written in that form. Now, somebody may ask you, like, let's say you have an array of subarrays, and now convert that into array. Okay, convert the subarray. Okay, wait. Array of subarrays into into object. Okay, now somebody given you this kind of objects, this kind of array here, and they ask you to convert it into the object format. So how you can do that? I can do something like this. For example, let me take my array. My array is this one. Okay, I'm going to select something like this. Okay, I mean, it can be a string or number. It is fine. Anything is fine. I just want to take it as a number data type. That is the reason I have converted this one. Now I just use a console.log. Okay. Basically, object is my base class. Dot. There is some method called from entries. Okay. If you go here, right, there is something called from entries. What's from entries will do? Starting method transforms a list of key value pairs into an object. Okay. So that is the reason from entries is my method. So from entries, from which entries? From array entries. I want to convert that into an array. Object. That's it. Simple. So now if you go here, right, you can see the object name and the test age is test name and age is a 56. Okay, these are all the very basic stuff. Probably we have wasted our 30 minutes of time. People may think like, yeah, I agree, because these are all, but there are some few more methods are there. These things definitely you need to know. If you want to understand those things, definitely you need to what it is called. You need to know how these methods will work. And okay, so just a minute. Uh, okay, okay, fine, great. Now what I will do, I will just go with some kind of notes here. Okay, there are something called a property descriptors. You need to understand what is the concept of a property descriptors. How many of you are aware of property descriptors? How many of you know what is the concept of property descriptor? No one? Just at least respond yes or no.
No, sir.
Okay, no. So, see, basically, property descriptors are used to describe your property. Okay, basically, describe your property in the sense, describe your property, what it is called. Uh, okay, let me explain in this way. So, there are different kind of property descriptors are there. Okay, the property descriptors are total, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are there. Okay, the first one is a value. You know what is a property. I will just write down some notes like property descriptors. These are used to define your property. Okay, in object directly. These are used to define your property directly. Okay. Now, first one is a value. people, everybody know what is a values. Value is nothing but a key value pair, right? Inside the key value pair, key is the one you define, that is nothing but a property, and the value you define. Okay, now let me come up with some example. Let's say you have something called a letter object is there. So my property descriptor object is there, like p object. Let's consider it as a p object. Okay, p object one. Okay, I have something like an empty object here. Now you want to add a new property for this one. Basically what you need to do is simply you can do something like a p object. Okay, this is my object, but we have something called, we are using a dot notation or square bracket notation and all, right? So instead of using all those things, we have one predefined method. That predefined method is nothing but a define property. There is a method called a define property method. Okay, define property is there, define properties is there. Define property is used to define only one property. Define properties is used to define a multiple properties. Okay, so the define property static method defines a new property directly on an object, or modifies an existing property on an object and returns the object. Okay, let's go with that one. So how this will work? Let's say there is an object class, and define property is one of the method. Define property is my method. This will take three parameters. Okay, always remember it will take three parameters. The first parameter is nothing but object on which you want to apply the property, and the second one is a property name. I mean, so like you can give anything. Let's say I have given something like a name, and the third parameter is always a sub object where it contains a multiple values. The first one is a value. The value is nothing but something like I have given something like a value. That's it, nothing much. This is what you want to learn about a value parameter. Okay, the property descriptors are total six parameters are there. One is a value, next one is a writable, next one is a enumerable, and next one is a configurable. Configurable. Next one is a vector, vector, and take it references. That's it. Okay, these values you need to understand a little bit. Okay, you need to learn a lot. So the first one is a value, as I mentioned. So how you can define a value for the particular property? You can use a define properties method by using a p of three parameters. First one is object name, next one is a property name, next one is a one object which contains the multiple key value pairs. The value is a one of the parameters for that. Okay, now if I create like this, now let's say console.log, console.log, I have prepared something like a p object. Okay, now I want to create, I mean, I want to display this object. What is happening over here? If you see this one, right? So currently it is showing something like a what it is called empty object. Seriously, I have added a different property there with a name, but why it is not showing here? Okay, because see, always remember that there is something called a value of a writable, enumerable, configurable. These three are the values which we are define the property. How it will define? Whenever you are adding something like a writable, if this is true, then only you can change or modify, change the value of property. Otherwise, not. Okay. Similarly, enumerable, right? Enumerable in the sense, if this is true, so this is true, then only you can display the property in loops. Otherwise, not. Configurable. If this is true, then only you can either delete or modify the property. Otherwise, not. Okay, I will tell you what is that. Forget about this getter and setter for now. Okay, first of all, you saw this one. I have defined a property with a name Balu. I'm using like a POBJ equals to 1. Okay, but it is returning an empty object. Okay, if you want just a second guys. I just changed to some other file. I just want to make it clear. That's why. See the same thing, nothing but the previous outputs will not be there. Instead of that, it will print only this one. Okay. Node obj.js. If you observe this one, this is an empty, right? Now tell me what is the output of this one. If I put a POBJ1 dot name, see there is nothing here. The object is empty, right? Correct. Now what if I put a P object dot name? What it will display? Any guess?
Sorry, P object one.
P object1 dot name. Basically, when I try to print a P object, see, this is what my P object is. I'm just keeping console.log here, P object. This is what I'm trying to print here. Okay. Now it is printing an empty object. Similarly, P object one dot name, the empty object inside the property is not there. Obviously, I'm expecting some error. Like there is no, what it is called, there is no such a property name, something like that, right? So, but what I will get something like a value here. Okay. See, if you observe this one, this is wonder. Seriously, P object is not there, but P object one dot name is returning a value. How? That is what the beauty of define a property. When you are using a define property, by default, the writable equals to false and enumerable equals to false and configurable equals to false. First of all, what is this enumerable means basically? Enumerable in the sense, if this is a true, then only you can display the property in a loops, otherwise not. See, that clearly mentioned that if you are using a enumerable equals to false, but still, if it is a false, then you cannot display that inside the loops. Loops in the sense what? Whenever you are using something like a console.log of p object one, internally JavaScript engine will loop over each and every property of that particular object and trying to display that one. So while in that loop, you cannot see that. But if you directly access that variable name, it will display. Okay. Now I have something called, see, I told you there are different kind of property descriptors are there. One is a value, next one is a writable, next one is enumerable, next one is a configurable. I'm just dealing with enumerable. So if I go with the enumerable here, right? So I earlier, okay, let's say first of all you want to know what is the object descriptors. Okay, what is the descriptors of this particular property? By default, what are those? If you want to display those things, just put a console.log. Like there is a method called object dot get own property descriptors. Okay, so there is a method called get own property descriptor of. Okay, you need to pass two parameters. First one is a p object one. This is my object. Next one is a property name, whatever the property name. Let's say I want to know the property about I mean information about a name property is there, but what is the property descriptors for that one? If you try to display that one, right, it will show you like a initially value is a value, that is what we define. And internally, what JavaScript engine will add it, writable and make it a false, enumerable make it a false, configurable make it as false. Now, what I did, like if I put another property, for example, value is a value, and I want to make enumerable equals to true, means by forcefully I'm changing the default value from false to the true. What does it means? This means I am asking a JavaScript engine to display that in the loops. If it is a false, then it won't display that in the loops. If it is a true, then only it will display in the loops, right? So when I put a true inside my P object, what I'm expecting is I want to display the property of value as well. See, this is my previous output. Just remember the previous output. I'm not deleting this one. Just keep it as it is. And now I'm trying to create I try to run the new code. In the new code, what I did, I just made a enumerable equals to true. When I put enumerable equals to true, it is clearly displaying the property name and it is like property and value, key pair values, and then I'm accessing adding an individual property name that is displaying. And if you observe this one, I make it enumerable equals to true, right? That is why it is displaying it. Remember, enumerable equals to by default false, but whenever you make it a true, then only it will applicable or this particular property will display on inside the what it is called inside the loops. Otherwise, it won't display inside the loops. Okay. Okay, we will go with the more examples. Then you will understand a little bit more. Okay, I have some property like this. Okay, I have some property like this. Let's consider that property is object two. Okay, now I have some property something like a height. Height is my property. Let's say the value is something like a 5.2. Okay, 5.3 something like the enumerable equals to true, right? Make it as it is. Okay, I don't want to change it okay, let's say enumerable equals to true, make it true. So now you know, right? If I try to print this console.log of property of object 2, then basically what will happen here? Okay, if you run this one, right, definitely the empty object will come. Oh, what? Seriously, did I do any mistake here? Okay, define property and enumerable equals to true. If that is the case, sorry, I want to make it two here. I should make it a true. Okay, two. Now just go ahead and see like height equals to 5.3. This is what my object printing here. Okay, right. Now what I will do, if I put something like console.log p object, right? So if I put something like a console.log of p object two dot height. Okay. If it is like this, then definitely you are able to access that 5.3 as well. See, this is what the number. Now what I want to trying to do is I'm just trying to change p object dot height equals to something like a 7.2, something like this. Okay. Again, after that I want to display this object and let's see what will happen here. Okay. I changed that 5.3 to 7.2 here. Okay. Now what will happen here? If I do something like this, what seriously it is a 5.3? Come on. I already modified this one from 5.3 to overwrite it to 7.2, right? But still it is not working. Why? Because as I mentioned earlier, whenever you declare an object, by default the writable equals to false. See, if you observe at the top, this notes, right? If this is true, then only you can change the value of the property. Otherwise, you not. Okay. So that means you need to make a writable equals to true for this particular object parameter, I mean, object property. Then only you can change that. Writable equals to, you need to make it as a true explicitly. Okay, you need to make it explicitly true, then only this value changes will be applied, otherwise it won't. Okay, let's see. If you may see this one, the new value is a 7.2 because I already changed that. But if you make it as a false, writable equals to false, then what will happen? Okay, that won't change. That is 5.3 is as it is 5.3. So the property descriptors are total six property descriptors. The first one is a value, next one is a writable, next one is enumerable. Writable, if you make it as a true, then only you can change the particular value of the particular what. You remember I have given one problem statement also for this one. Now I got this one, something Divyansh or someone did that. I deleted this one also, right? Somebody asked you like to create a property, but you should not allow them to modify the particular property. So this is what the enumerable and writable is. There is something called a configurable. Okay, let's say there is something called an object is in your hand. Okay, let's say this is your object, like a p object 3. Let's say inside the p object 3 you have some property, something called a something like a is good. Let's say is good is your property, and the value is initially by default it is a true, and writable is also equals to true, and enumerable equals to true. Now, what you want to do is you just want to put a console.log. There is a p object equals to p obj3. You want to display this one. If this is the case, definitely you can see all the object whatever it is. That is nothing but is good equals to true. Yeah, that is good. But before the after this, what I want to do is p object 3 dot is good is my what property. I want to delete this one. If you want to delete any property, you can use something like a delete keyword. Delete space object dot that one. Okay, that's it. Now, if you put a console dot log, definitely I'm expecting a what empty object here, because that is only one property here. So I want to delete that one and show me that empty object. But still, it is showing is good equals true. Seriously, I just removed that. Still it is showing. How come? Because there is a one of the property descriptor called a configurable. If you make a configurable equals to true, then only you can delete any property values. Otherwise, no. I just make it a true. That means you are able to delete this one. Otherwise, you cannot delete this one. So when I make it a configurable equals to true, the delete space p object dot is good will work, and the property will be deleted. And then I'm seeing a empty object here. If I make it a false, in that case, definitely you cannot delete the property. You can simply see the existing value, whatever is good equals to true, that will display here. Did you guys understood what is the property descriptor, sir? I mean, if you have a one property inside any object, you can have a more control on that one. In a real time, people usually what they will do, they will create some objects and they don't want to delete that one because they don't want to pollute their object or others to delete that one. So that is the reason what they will do. They will simply add the property descriptors for those. Once the property descriptors are added, you will have a more control on that particular object instead of creating an object in these ways. Like earlier we did this one, right? We will create an object by using a simple object creation or a new object of or a create method or something like a assign method. We will use these multiple different ways, right? Instead of that, what they will do, they will create an object, but they will add a properties in such a way like by using a different property method. So that what will happen, they will have a more control on that. along with the properties, as I mentioned, like there is some method called a define property, but inside the define property, what is that? But there is a define property, only one method is here. But if you come back to here, right, there is another method called a define properties. See, the thing is, like, you can add any number of properties here. Okay, how you can add any number of properties? Basically what you need to do, so let's say there is something called let something like a test object, or let's say take as an object. Okay, we don't have a variable here, test object. Okay, so there is an object. Inside the object, currently I'm not doing anything, I'm taking an empty object. But on the top of this object, I want to add a more number of properties at a time. Instead of writing a, see, this is a object.define property and object.define property, I'm writing a multiple object.define property methods, right? Instead of that, what I will do, I will use a single shot. I mean to say, like, in a single shot, I will use a define properties method. Inside the define properties method, you can have a more number of parameters. The parameters is the first one is object on which you want to add the properties, and next one is nothing but a one array. I mean to say, like, one another object. Inside this object, you can add something like this. For example, name is my property. Okay, inside the name property, you can have a more number of control. For example, for the name, I will add this one. What is that? Name is a value and enumerable equals to true. So when I keep something like this, then what will happen? The other two parameters, like a configurable and writable, is a false for that. Similarly, you have another object, right? Just a minute. Okay. Define property of a first one. Okay, and the second one, again you need to give another property here, right? So you will go here and just give another property here. The another property is something called I want to give something like a height. So inside the height, I want to add a writable and enumerable for those things. So for example, I will just mention height. Okay, this is another object. Inside the object, you have something like a value writable enumerable equals to what. Let's say now I have a two properties. One is a name and height inside the object. So now I want to display those things. If you just go here and just put a console.log of obj, then definitely what will happen? See, so I have created a two variables, right? One is a name and next one is a height. If you see here, right, name is a value, enumerable equals to true, and writable equals false. For example, I just want to make it as a false here. If I mention, just hold for a minute, guys. Ah, the thing is, I'm sorry, guys. So the thing is, the first one, when make it as a false, that means it will not show it in the inside the loop. But I make it writable equals to true here, and enumerable equals to true. In that cases, what will happen here? Okay, so if you see this one, right, the last output, I have only the height. I don't have a name property because I just make it as a false. So if I make it as a true, then only you will display here. Okay. And similarly, I want to have another property, something called is good is my property. So if I use a use good property, inside the is good property, what I will do, I will have something like a writable and value writable, enumerable and configurable. All the values equals to here. Okay, just make it here, save. And if you want to display those values and see name, height, and is good equals to true. So this is how you will have a control on more number of properties in a single shot. That is why we are using a is defined properties. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, there is a something called a get on property descriptor. Already you saw about this one. See, for example, if I go to here, right, in the my very first example, I mentioned this method, object.get on property descriptor. This will returns only the descriptor about, or the definition about only one property, that is called a name. But if you want to know about a more number of descriptors, object.get on property descriptors is my method. So this one is helps you to get all the property descriptors in a single shot. For example, I have three properties over the method or the object called obj. Now what I will do, I will just put a console.log of object.get one property descriptors of which one, which is this object. And now let's see what will happen here. If you observe this one, right? Okay, right. I will do one thing. I will just comment out the old code, everything. Now you can see clearly about this output. Okay. If you see this one, right? So this is my object first if you prepared, and name, which contains a value writable, enumerable, configurable. And similarly, height, which is a value writable, enumerable, configurable, and is good also, which is having a three properties. Guys, just give me 1 second, please. Okay, so this is how you will prepare all or display all the properties or all the properties of a particular object, and you will have more control whether you decide like whether you can delete the object or change the value. Everything you have own control on this get on property descriptors. As I mentioned in the top, you can see the notes. I have total six type of object. Sorry, total six property descriptors are there. One is a value, next is a writable, next one is enumerable, next one is a configurable. So you are done with all the four things, but we have still two more pending. One is a get and set. So basically, what getter and setter will do. So how these getter and setters will work? Okay, we will see something like this. See, always there are two types of access okay, uh, just a minute. Basically, what will happen, right? These all property descriptors are divided into two types. Okay, these property descriptors are divided into two types. Okay, what are those two types? The very first one is data descriptors. Okay, second one is accessory descriptors. So what is a data descriptor and what is the access descriptor? So inside the data descriptor, see, both the descriptors contains this enumerable and configurable. Okay, this is also contains enumerable. This is also contains enumerable. This is also contains sorry. This is also contains configurable value. This is also contains configurable value. See, enumerable and configurable is a common for both data descriptors and access descriptors. But there is something called value and writable are there, right? So whenever you want to create any property by using a data descriptor format, make sure you are using a value and a writable. These two are one set. And when you are trying to provide a more access on the particular descriptors, or that is the case, you need to use a getter and setter. Okay. So either use getter and setter or use a value and writable. Don't mix those things. Don't write a value, enumerable, configurable, and writable and get. No, that is wrong. Don't write a set value, configurable, enumerable. No, that is wrong. Either use a value or writable or use a get and set. Okay. So how this getter and setter will help you to define a particular data or define some particular values here. Okay. So now I have this one, right? I will just comment out this piece of code for your for a namesake. Okay. Just keep it as it is. Now I will go with another example. Okay, so here what I have something like let obj is my object. Inside the object, I have nothing. Clearly, I have defined an object. Inside the object, I want to add the property. Okay, obj object dot okay define property. Okay, just want to go with a single property for now so that you will understand clearly. So obj is my object and comma. What I need to give? I need to give a property name. Let's see that property name is a name. And here, as I mentioned earlier, there is something called a value, right? Okay. So either use, if you are using a value, you can use a writable. If you are not using a value, you can directly go to setter and method methods. Okay. So see, basically get is my method. You can write it in this way, like function, okay, something like this, and you can write it something like this, or you can directly use a something like this. Okay, no one will question it. Like either you can use a get and set methods here. Okay, and make sure you are having a something called a what it is called enumerable configurable is common. Okay, enumerable equals to true I mentioned here, and configurable equals to true I just mentioned here true. Okay, and remember one thing, these two are the common for every object, but out of these two, either use a value and writable or use a get and set. Okay, what get and set? For example, I will just take one variable. For example, let's say let mm, my name, let's say. Okay, let's say my name. So here initially I have given something like a bag. This is my default value. For example, let's consider it as a default value. So my name. So basically what I will do, I will just whenever use a get method, I will just use a my name value written here. Or if somebody is sending that value as a name, I mean name in the sense just put some test name, something like this. Okay, so if they pass some test name, so basically test new name. Okay, my name. So just put a new name. Okay, new name. Just what you need to do, you need to set that value. How you can set the value? Just my name equals to new name, that's it. Okay, so maybe confused, but don't worry. In next few minutes you will understand what is this one. Okay, so basically I have taken one variable. In the getter method, I'm returning this one. In the setter method, I'm setting that value, new name. That's it. Okay. Enumerable equals to true and configurable equals to true because these are common for every object. Why I make it true? Because I want to display that value and I want to change that or delete that value. Now, if I put a console.log and my object name is obj, right? So that is what I mentioned here, obj. And let's say if I see this one, right, what will happen here? So there is something called a getter and setter, blah blah blah. It is displaying something like this, right? Now, and you can loop over this one. Basically, you can loop over in this way, something like a for, okay, and for in you need to use. So basically, let's say there is a property, okay, inside my object obj, okay, inside my object. Now I put a console.log. Inside the console.log, what I want to do is I just want to display the property value, okay, and that value, okay, something like a colon, and that value is something like a obj of property, whatever it is, I want to display this. Okay. Now I'm just removing this console.log statement. Instead of that, I'm looping over entire object and I'm trying to display that name equals to val. Super. Now remember one thing, whenever you are using a console.log of, okay, obj.name. Now what you are doing is you are calling that particular value, right? You are calling that particular value. Whenever you are calling or invoking that particular value, then immediately that getter will be invoked. Whenever the getter is invoked, automatically it is written the value. It is a my name is a value, right? So just object not name that will return your object value. I'm just commenting out for a name purpose for a time being. Okay, now let's see. So what is happening? It is returning a value. So always remember that whenever you are calling a property explicitly, then immediately whatever the get method is there, that get method will be invoked automatically. Or instead of this one, the value property is there, right? In our previous examples, whatever we have value property, right? So that value property will invoke whenever you are explicitly calling that particular property of the object. Now, somebody wants to change the value, something like a object.name. Okay, I'm sorry, obj.name obj.name. Okay, they want to change it to something like a Suresh. Okay, something like a Suresh. Now whenever they put a console.log object.name, see this will work. Why? Because I just make it as a enumerable equals to true, configurable equals to true. There is no writable, right? But still how it is changing, as I mentioned in the configurable notes, right? Just go here, configurable means if it is true, then only you can either delete or modify the property. Okay, both modification and deletion can be happen by using a configurable property. So here the configurable property is a true. That means you can modify that value. So the name got changed from Balu to Suresh. And remember one thing, whenever you apply a assignment operator that is equals to on any of the property name to modify that, immediately setter method will invoke. Whenever the setter method will invoke, whatever the value you are passing, that will go it as a new name. And that new name will be again assigned back to the my name variable here. And whenever you are trying to display again second time, it will display the my name property value. So so I will just mention here something like a old name, okay, and here it is comes as a new name. Okay, that's it. Now let's see what will happen here. The old name is a Balu, but new name is a Suresh. But now I'll just play with the simple thing. Configurable, I will make it as a false. So what configurable make it equals to false? Usually you know, right? Basically when you are making a configurable equals to false, you cannot modify the value or you cannot delete the value. That is what you did there, right? That is what you know aware of. But there is something called when you are using a getter and setter, in that cases, even if you make it a configurable equal to false, you can control over the delete option, but you cannot control over the editing option. Editing in the sense, whenever you are calling equals to that object dot that property equals to, by default it will call the setter, and whenever the setter is called, immediately the new name will be assigned here. And obviously, whenever you are calling that particular property again, immediately the getter will be invoked and getter will display this. So configurable equals to false won't work here. So that is the reason I just want to make sure that something like delete object dot name. I just want to show this one. So if you go here, right, what you will do? Oh, so configurable equals to false in the sense obviously you cannot delete as well. Okay, if it is a make it as a true, then definitely you can change this one. See, configurable is false only in this case when you are using a getter and setter. In that time, only configurable equals to true will work only for the delete option, but not for a modifying option. I mean, it is like you cannot modify that. Are we clear? Guys, have any questions or anything? Please speak out.
Hello.
Veera, Divyansh, Sandeep.
Hello.
Yes, yes, Sandeep, go ahead.
Yeah. Why the null is a consideration type of a object? Instead of the null, you are using in the null type of is a object. So why the null is a considered in the object?
That is a known error in a JavaScript.
Okay, okay,
Understood? That is a
okay.
known. Even if you go for a no documentation, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just
I see the documents, but there is no explanation of the null
yes,
is a type
no
of
one will
object.
give. No one is trying to change that value because once that is changed, lot of things are going to be changed. That is the reason they thought like, okay, it is a minor bug. Let's leave it. So it's a known error, and everyone knows about that. It's an open error.
Okay, 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 okay. Thank you.
Okay, so this is how the things will work. Like you can have a more control over the properties on the object to delete those or to add those or to modify those everything you can define those everything by using this property descriptors. This is really somewhat important concept, guys. Just go ahead and try to understand more. It is not a rocket science, but definitely it's really important when you go for some big companies are there, right? Like let me stop that recording. Where it is.
Recording stopped.
If you go for a big companies, right, people will ask you to write a prototype or writing polyfill or writing a object. They will simply give you an object and they will ask like, okay, I want to change this property, but it should not change. I will delete the particular property, but it should not delete. How you can prevent this? Of course, people can use like a freeze methods and all. Instead of the freeze method and all, if you have a property over a single property, now if you use a freeze, right, a freeze method will work on each and every property of the particular object. But what he is asking is there are three properties, two properties can be changed. That's okay, I'm agree for that. But first property should not change. How you can prevent that? In that case, you need to create an object by using a defined properties or a defined property. By that time, you need to mention that whether in configurable equals true or false. And if you want to modify those values, the change equals to true or false. Sorry, sir, I'm not able to interact today. That's okay. Sometimes things will happen wrong. I mean, because we are busy with some other stuff and all, I can understand.